Hi, my name is Miranda.
And I'm Qimora. Today we're starting a brand new series all about Jesus.
Yeah, and Jesus takes center stage in our lives. But even before us, in the Old Testament, all the great people of the Bible all point to Jesus.
What great people?
People like Moses and Elijah. And we'll talk more about them later in the God story. But for now, we have this awesome 8-bit Bible series I think you're gonna love. Check this out.
Today, our story is from the book of Mark. It's a story about a mountain, an over-eager disciple, and two very, very old guests.
When Jesus was 30 years old, he left his hometown, and after being baptized by John the Baptist, he began teaching. As he taught, word spread quickly and more people came out to see him. People heard he was performing miracles and healing sick people. He had healed blind people, deaf people, people who couldn't walk. He even raised people from the dead. One time, he fed thousands of people with just a few loaves of bread and a couple fish. Even though people were excited about Jesus' miracles and teaching, most people still didn't understand who he really was. One day, Jesus asked his disciples who people thought he was. Elijah, John the Baptist, a prophet, they answered. Then he asked them who they thought he was. Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." That was the right answer. Jesus was the Messiah, the promised deliverer, the rescuer who would save us all. For once, Peter had said the right thing. And 6 days later, Jesus helped 3 of his disciples see who he truly was. And that leads to today's story from Mark 9, verse 2 to 13.
Why did the scientist take out his doorbell? Because he wanted to win the Nobel Prize. Hi, I'm Mikayla, and I have this friend named Emily, and she's incredibly spontaneous and lives in the moment. She doesn't always think before she acts, but this is really great when she sees somebody in need, because she's the first one to go over there and make sure they're okay. Jesus had a disciple like this, and his name was Peter. Out of Jesus' 12 disciples, he was really close to 3 of them, Peter, James, and John. Peter is this really interesting guy because he shows what it's like to be human who's just trying to follow Jesus the best he can. In this series, we're going to be looking at Peter as he relates to God and how we can learn from him. And as Peter learns from Jesus, he makes these really interesting and important discoveries. And that brings me to today's big idea, which is the great people of the Bible all point to Jesus. Today's God story comes from Mark 9, verse 2 to 10. Let me set the scene. So Jesus has been traveling with his disciples, and so he brings 3 of them, Peter, James, and John, up to a mountain. Now here's the thing. Whenever you see a mountain in the Bible, you know something big and important is about to happen. So here they were on a mountain. Peter, James, John, and Jesus. And let's read what happens. There in front of them, his appearance was changed. His clothes became so white they shone. They were whiter than anyone in the world could bleach them. Elijah and Moses appeared in front of Jesus and his disciples. The 2 of them were talking with Jesus. Okay, so if you don't know who Moses and Elijah are, you might be a bit confused. So here's the scoop. Moses was this amazing Hebrew leader. He was also the guy that God gave the 10 Commandments to. He was born around 1,500 years before Jesus. He would have represented the law, the 10 Commandments, and the Old Covenant that God made with the Israelites. Elijah was also this massive figure. He was a prophet and did amazing things for God. He lived 900 years before Jesus, and he would have represented the prophets and their teachings. Both of these great people that represent the law and the prophets point towards Jesus. Jesus is this point, and all of the great people in the Bible point towards him. Let's see what Peter had to say about this. Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters. One will be for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." Peter didn't really know what to say because they were so afraid. Peter was the one who broke the silence. He didn't know what to say. The verse tells us that he and the others, James and John, were afraid. I mean, could you imagine seeing these people reappear? What would you have thought? I know I would have been super nervous. And then something else amazing happened. A big cloud comes over Jesus, Moses, and Elijah, and a voice comes from it, saying, "This is my son. I love him. Listen to him." This is very similar to what happened at Jesus' baptism. God said, "This is my son. I love him." God is pointing to Jesus, saying, listen to him. So we get this amazing glimpse of God's awesomeness. Peter, James, and John were probably pretty shocked. And then, when they looked around, Elijah and Moses were gone. So they walked down the mountain. And on the way down, Jesus said to them to not tell anybody what they had seen. He said, wait until I have risen from the dead. So they kept it to themselves, but they kept chatting about it. What did Jesus mean by wait until he had risen from the dead? They didn't know God's plan. They must have been pretty confused. You see, this scene shows that Jesus is God. It shows that the law, think Moses, and the prophets, think Elijah, all point towards Jesus. All of these great people point to Jesus. We can read the Old Testament and see Jesus. Our mission is to point others to Jesus. So let's all be challenged by that this week. I'm Mikayla, and I'll see you next time.
Turn to the person next to you and answer the following questions.
Yeah! Question time. Who were the two guys that showed up on the mountain with Jesus? What did they represent?
That's huge. The law and the prophets all pointed to Jesus. Miranda, do you know anyone who points you to Jesus?
Yeah, actually, my mom. She points me to Jesus by acting kind and caring, just like Jesus.
That's a good answer. We asked a bunch of our friends that same question. Take a look.
The great people of the Bible all point to Jesus. Who in your life points to Jesus?
My mom and dad usually point me to Jesus because they always help me read the Bible and help me learn more about Jesus.
My mom and my grandma, because they're always like reading the Bible with me and praying with me, and my brother just because he's my brother.
I see Jesus in my daddy because he helps me not do the same bad things again.
I see Jesus in the people in my small group because they're always caring for each other, and like when we're going through tough times, they're always supporting us and praying for us. And I think Jesus would do that too.
My cousin, because he prays a lot.
My friend, because once I fell and then he was nearby and he was like, "Are you okay? Do you need a bandage from the office?"
What characteristics should someone have to point to Jesus?
Compassion and mercy.
They're kind of just happy.
They're great and they're loving. Like they don't yell, they're not very picky about things. You say nice things to people.
Giving to the homeless and the poor.
If you do something wrong, they still forgive you and love you no matter what you do.
How can you point to Jesus?
I can show Jesus to other people by not yelling, not getting upset at them.
Be nice to people who mean to you.
Spending time with them and getting to know them and then eventually tell them about Jesus. Be very nice to them and help them if they're feeling sad.
Show forgiveness and patience to people.
When my brother's hurt, I run over and help. Be kind to everybody.
Question time. Who in your life points you to Jesus? And how does that help you focus more on Jesus?
So, all of our friends have a lot of different people that point them to Jesus, like their friends or even their family.
And we can also point people to Jesus in our everyday lives.
Totally. Let's break off into small groups and see what this is like in our own lives.